In a faraway desert village, there once lived a merchant who owned both a strong camel and a faithful dog. The camel carried heavy loads across the burning sands, while the dog guarded the merchant's camp at night, barking away thieves and wild animals. Though their duties were different, they often traveled together and shared the same tent. The merchant cared for both, feeding the dog meat scraps and the camel fresh hay. For a long time, the two animals lived in peace. But one evening, as the merchant sat down to dinner, something stirred inside the camel's heart. He watched as the merchant tossed pieces of meat to the dog, who wagged his tail in joy. The camel chewed his dry hay silently, feeling a heavy lump of jealousy rise within him. Why, thought the camel bitterly, does he treat that tiny creature with such affection while I, who carry his goods across the desert, get nothing but straw? I am stronger, larger, and far more useful, yet all his kindness goes to that foolish dog. From that day on, envy began to cloud the camel's mind. The next morning, the merchant prepared for another long journey. The sun blazed high above the dunes, and the camel marched on with heavy bundles tied to his back. The dog trotted beside them, panting in the heat but cheerful as always. At sunset, they reached an oasis and set up camp. The merchant sat under a palm tree, feeding the dog as usual. The camel watched, his anger boiling over. If only I could win his attention the way that dog does, he muttered. An idea struck him, a foolish, dangerous idea. That night, as the merchant slept peacefully and the dog dozed beside him, the camel began to sway his neck and grunt loudly. Then, just as the dog did to please his master, the camel tried to wag his tail and lick the merchant's face. But the camel's rough tongue and heavy muzzle startled the merchant out of his dreams. Thinking he was under attack, the merchant shouted in fear. The dog jumped up, barking wildly, and the entire camp awoke. When the merchant realized what had happened, he grew furious. "You foolish animal!" he shouted. "You have scared me half to death and ruined my sleep." The next morning, the merchant drove the camel harder than ever, refusing to feed him until nightfall. The dog, meanwhile, stayed by his side, guarding him as always. By sunset, the camel was exhausted and ashamed. He realized how envy had blinded him. His attempt to copy the dog had not earned him love, it had earned him punishment. That night he whispered to himself, "I wish to be loved like the dog, but I forgot that everyone has their own place and purpose." The merchant loved the dog for his watchfulness and me for my strength. I let jealousy destroy my peace. From then on, the camel never again compared himself to anyone. He worked with quiet pride, content with what he had. And though the dog never knew the whole story, he noticed that the camel never frowned again when meat was served. Moral: be content with your role in life. Envy of others' blessings blinds us to our own worth. Every creature, great or small, has a purpose that makes it special.